well, I did have a similar success recently. So there's really nothing there, but I know that I'm competitive inherently. So when other people get things like that, I often go, oh, well, I didn't get that. What does it mean about me? Or they got that instead of me. And I have to avoid thinking, well, at least I have this, or trying to compare myself to them, because it's not worth it. It's a losing battle, and it's how you ruin friendships, right? Becoming competitive with your friends is a really good way to ruin all your relationships.
This is Scratch Your Own Itch, the one show that delivers the conversations that we're afraid to share, but need to. This show is all about creating a life worth living. I'm Logan Tyler Nelson, and I'm your host. So, you're going to hear conversations with creators and entrepreneurs talk about what they do, their current and past traumas, how they became who they are, and what they are truly curious about. This is the show where we talk about the things we think about a lot, but need to talk about more. Please take note that this show is not a substitute for actually creating a life worth living, because this show will stir your beliefs, make you question what it means to create a life worth living. So my promise to you is to always give you one question to answer for yourself today, to start turning your dreams into a reality. Hey, ladies and gents. Before I get into this interview with Jordan Harbinger, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my show. But the thing is, it's your show too. Because I know you're taking precious time out of your day to listen to this show. And I really, really appreciate that. And I do not take that at all as a given. So I appreciate your time and your energy to listen right now. So I want to read off a recent review that I received, in which I really think it's important that anybody takes time out of their day to write in a review and it not be recognized. So I just want to read off a review and also give you an opportunity to maybe write in your own review. But I recently got this review from MS Latron, and he said, I love your mission and what you are creating with your podcast. Love your mini-sode on the truth of finding your so-called purpose, breathing in the inspiration, and creating my best life yet. That is awesome. Thank you so much, MS Latron. And hey, I invite anyone that is listening right now, if they take the time to write a review, I would love to read it up on the show. And also, if you hit that subscribe button, don't miss another episode. I really, really appreciate that. I think it's very, very, very important that you know that you're not alone, and that when you hear that, to actually take that in, because I know what it's like to be told that you're not alone when you do feel like you're alone, because it feels so real. And to actually be told that you're not alone and that you can reach out for help, it feels a little vulnerable. And I get that too. So taking the time to reach out and put out energy and be vulnerable like that, like virtual hug right now for you, so hard. I think it's so brave for anyone that takes time, that has gone through struggles, whatever struggle you're going through, because everyone's on some elevator of struggle, just on different levels. So I really, really, really appreciate you. And I want you to always remember that if you want a group and a community to hang out with, I'm going to add in my Facebook group that you can start scratching your own itch with. And what that means is just to really realize what itch you want to scratch. What are you thinking about that you keep on thinking about that you really want to start doing in your life? I think it's so important to be able to finally take on that mission that you want to start making in your life and actually make it and turn it into a reality. So, please do. But, yeah, just a real quick thing too. This interview with Jordan, it was a real dream come true. And I feel like I did okay with it, to be totally honest. I didn't do amazing, I didn't do my best, but I did okay. And I think it's really important, though, to recognize that sometimes you have great work that you produce, and sometimes you have okay work that you produce, and that you should still share the okay work. Still share the hardness, the struggles, because people often relate with that more than the perfect and the perfected work. So this is work that I'm not super proud of, but it's got to be shared, and it's with a great guest who did an amazing job. It's just me who feels like I didn't do my best, and I'm taking responsibility for it, as we talk about in the interview. It's extreme ownership, and maybe I can prepare better next time. And I prepared hardcore with this interview, but you can always do more. And I believe that anybody that is in that area where they're like, can I do more? You always can. But don't be so critical of yourself that it actually stops you from doing anything. Every now and then, we just gotta have bad days, I guess, in order to actually start having good days, right? Same with these interviews. Sometimes we have to have bad interviews in order to have good interviews, or sometimes we have to have bad experiences with things in life in order to have good experiences. So, anyways, I probably talked a little bit too much, so I want you to listen in, hit that subscribe button, and please don't waste a second in writing to me and reaching out if you would like to start scratching your own itch and start getting on podcasts and be an expert in an area that you know you are an expert in. So, this is a done-for-you service of podcast guesting that I love to do for other people, because I think it allows people to really figure out what they're amazing at by talking about it. And when you do that, you actually start learning a lot of the information that you would like to learn. As they say, to be a great student, sometimes you got to be a great teacher. And you only know what you can teach. So, there's another reason to get on a podcast, right? So, all right, without further ado, enjoy my interview with the one and only Jordan Harbinger. So, my curiosity question for you is, are you working harder or are you working smarter? Okay, let me ask you that again. Are you working harder or are you working smarter? Let's just say I gave you a sheet of paper with 5 blank spaces. What 5 people would you write down? What 5 people do you wish you were around more often? Because here's the thing. The environment that broke you cannot be the environment that puts you back together. You can't heal yourself around the same people that broke you. The people who caused you pain, because every single day will be a different reminder of the past, the bruises and the wounds. You can't start loving yourself around the same people who made you doubt yourself. Question yourself, question your abilities, and had a hard time loving you for who you are. You can't build yourself around those who destroyed you. You can't use their bricks as a foundation because it won't hold you together. It never did. You can't smile from the heart around those who made you cry. Cry your eyes out. You can't be happy around those who made you miserable. You can't speak up around those who constantly silenced you. You can't love your voice when you're surrounded by the same people who told you that you don't have a voice. You can't fall in love with anyone when you're surrounded by people who constantly point out your flaws and the flaws of anyone you like. You can't give someone a fair chance when you're around those who shut out anyone they don't approve of. If any of this is resonating with you, and you want to learn how to not surround yourself with miserable people, this episode is for you, because I have an incredibly talented person on the episode today. His name is Jordan Harbinger, and he's the master at surrounding yourself with people that you admire to be like, and to actually prod out some of the best questions out of the person that you wish to be more like. His name is Jordan Harbinger, and Jordan has always had an affinity for social influence, interpersonal dynamics, and social engineering, helping private companies test the security of their communication systems, and working with law enforcement agencies before he was even old enough to, well, drive. He has also worked for various governments and NGOs overseas, traveled through war zones, and had actually been kidnapped twice. But he'll tell you the only reason he's still alive today and kicking is because of his ability to talk his way out of just about any type of situation. So, without further ado, give a huge warm welcome to the one and only Jordan Harbinger.
Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Oh man. Likewise. I mean, this is awesome. I'm super pumped for this. I shared it right away once I heard about this with the Mind Pump family that you're coming on. So later, during the interview, I'll definitely be asking some questions that they wanted to ask you. So, but
cool.
To start it all off, I want to ask you, what is something that you're trying to constantly answer for yourself? What's really making you curious right now in life?
Oh man. What's making me curious in life? That's tough. I mean, for me, I think I'm thinking about the next phase of my life, trying to figure out when to have kids and stuff like that. So I'm realizing there's never a good time, right? You're always too busy. There's always something else going on. So I think that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out is right now really not a good time, or is that just what everyone thinks? And I have a feeling that's just what everyone thinks. So yeah, that's what's going through my head these days.
Yeah. It's that constant pain of like, Jordan, it's time. You're getting up there. You should probably have kids. Yeah, we know you have cats. We know.
Yeah, I do.
So the next thing I'd like to ask is, though, what do you think is the thing that really brought you into becoming a masterful interviewer, and how are you kind of scratching that itch right now?
Well, the interview thing was just practice, pure and simple. A lot of people will try to give these poetic answers where they're like, oh, it's curiosity. And I mean, yeah, sure, there's some of that. But really, the idea is you practice it over and over and over again. I've been doing my show, The Jordan Harbinger Show, and other shows for 11 years. So, of course, I'm going to have some natural, and I say natural because it naturally built over time. I don't mean naturally inborn. Of course, I'm going to have some skills that, have come along that through that practice route. But I'm also going to have the same type of response to any sort of activity. So I'm really going to say it's just a practice thing. I don't think that people should look at anyone else as having any inborn talent. I don't think people should look at anyone else as having any sort of special skill. I've worked really hard. I've practiced a lot. I hire coaches to fill in my weak points. And that's really it. I mean, there's nothing else. There's no other magic sauce to it.
So it really sounds like preparation, preparation, preparation.
Yeah, it's that in practice. Yeah, exactly. If you want to count practice and preparation. And then, people say, well, at some level, you're naturally good at this. There's other people that have been doing this for 10 years. They're not as good as you. I don't know. I really don't know. I can only say for myself that I don't see a whole lot of natural talent. There might be some somewhere, but it took work to bring it out. It wasn't apparent in the beginning.
Hey, Logan Tyler Nelson here. I would so appreciate it if you took some time to hit the subscribe button. I really want to just honestly live and give. Why? Because I was told when I was young that if you're feeling down, the best way to feel better is by lifting someone up again. So in an effort to make someone feel less alone, please hit the subscribe button so the podcast has a better chance of being found and making someone feel less alone. And if you're feeling down, hey, it can help you. Know that by hitting that subscribe button, you just did someone a huge favor. So thank you for hitting that subscribe button. So I heard that part of the process, like the pre-interview process that you guys have, is you ask your guests to maybe think of 3 stories that they've never said on any other podcast. Has there ever been a guest who's been like, well, I really don't know what story then you want me to tell?
Yeah, I mean, tons of people have no clue. Tons of people have no clue what they want to say. And tons of people don't even do the prep, and then I have to figure it out or cancel the show. So yeah, there's plenty of that. I often just have to find it on my own. I mean, I do 6 to 10 hours of prep for each guest, and that's often the way that it goes for me. I'm always, me and my production team, I should say, are always having to carry that little burden.
So 6 to 10 hours, like what are you doing? Are you listening to their audiobooks? Could you kind of take us into that process?
Yeah, sure. So I'm listening to their audiobooks. I'm reading whatever books they have. I look at the Wikipedia websites, if they have one. I look at their own interviews that they have, any talks they have, Google, TED, whatever. I try to get in touch with their friends if I can and get some inside information on them if that's possible and doable in any way. And so I really do go through that sort of ridiculous process to get the amount of information that I can. And, I might even watch something if they've got a movie out or something like that. I'll always do that background. You have to. Otherwise, you're just going to ask the same questions as another journalist who didn't have time to prepare. So you should be able to do a much better interview than a regular journalist who didn't have any time to prepare. You should be able to out-prepare people, which will more than allow you to make up for any lack of talent that you have.
So, because I've seen your interviews, and usually you're doing them right in front of them. You're probably not like writing these questions that you want to ask really bad right in front of them, or are you? Are you writing down the questions and going, I really need to answer this. I really need to ask this question. And if you're not writing it down, how are you actually containing this information in a way where you know that you need to get to that question?
Part of that is just the show flow design. So I do write down all my questions that I want to ask. It's not all of them, I guess. Many of them. There's a show flow document in front of me, papers or in my iPad or something like that. I have it. And I've had a lot of people who've been in a lot of media say things like, you don't need the iPad. You're fine without it. And I think that they don't really realize what's in there. And I get why people say that, but it's funny to see because I think a lot of people just think I'm up there having a conversation. And part of that is true, but having enough prep, having the facts, that is what makes for a show that's highly educational. Otherwise, you have to do a 3-hour-long Joe Rogan program to get the same amount of content.
Oh man, it reminds me of what people think stand-up comedy is like. Like people think stand-up comedy is like, oh, this guy's never gone up there before ever, and he's just like working off the audience, and it's great. But it's like it is supremely rehearsed, and the best of the best comedians, they go to hundreds and thousands of kind of like hole in the mill. I don't even know if that's a phrase, or just terrible stand up comedy joints, and practice their routine before they actually go to anything that's Netflix worthy or
Sure. Yeah, of course.
And that's kind of how your interviews are. Then that's what I'm getting the sense of.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, what I'm doing is not necessarily rehearsed question and answer, but I do enough prep where I know that person's work pretty darn well. If it's a scientist, I'm looking into the work. I'm never going to know it as well as them, but I am going to be able to go, oh, so this is like that other thing. And I'll make connections between their work that either they make after a while or maybe something that they have never made. And they'll go, oh, right, yes, that. And it's really not that hard to be better than other interviewers or journalists because most people do not do the work. So if you're interviewing somebody and you've read the book, you're already going to probably be more informed, better informed than 95% of the other people that have talked to them. And if you're able to have a conversation that's coherent and fun and you've read the book, you're going to beat the other people that maybe have read the book, but that's because they're reviewing the book and then asking questions, or a moderator at some talk at the Commonwealth Club who read the book, earlier and has 5 questions prepared and then is taking audience questions. I'm able to have this conversation, but I'm also familiar with all of the person's background and their work. And then having read the book and then going to their Wikipedia and going to their friends, you get a feeling for them, and it's almost like you know them. And then by the time they're in front of you, if you act like you know them, they start to feel that way and they open up a lot more. And it just becomes a lot easier to create that kind of relationship with them and to create a friendly environment, I guess you would say, where the interview is secondary to the conversation, but the content really does pop out.
That is so cool. That is so cool. Wow. Wow. I love it because it's like finally I get to see where all the magic does happen. I want to ask you though, like, you take me back to before you had the success with the podcast, and not only your second awesome success, but or not only your first success, but your second success with the whole rebranding and everything like that. But take me back to like when you were like, hey, I'm not really where I want to go right now in life. Like I'm not doing the thing I don't even know what that thing is right now. But did you start just kind of surrounding yourself around people that you enjoyed being around, or did you kind of take the different route, which is, hey, I really want to be like that person because they work hard and they're inspiring. I better grind my grind my ass off and kind of like go for it and be the guy who is working harder than everybody else.
Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of outworking everyone. I think that is a great way to get ahead. I think most of us need to work a little harder, and people are like, don't work harder, work smarter. No, you should be working both harder and smarter, in my opinion. Really, you should be. I don't see any reason at all why you shouldn't be outworking everyone, and also why you should not be, well, working on your skills, working on your show. There's just no reason. I really don't think that there is. And I know that sounds a little bit maybe cliche, but I think a lot of people are like, don't work harder, work smarter. It's like, well, no, you should be doing both. You should be working both smart and hard, because now you have 2 competitive advantages. Why would you only want one? I never really understood that. I think it just sort of sounds good, but it's wrong. It's actually just straight up wrong.
I love it. I love it. Well, because it's often not this or that. It's
Mm-hmm.
like if you ask any great artist, like, oh, for example, a writer, like, we noticed that with this book, you didn't really tell that many great stories, but as far as the facts that are in it, oh, they were great. And then they come up and they go, okay, well, now I'm hearing that sort of feedback. My next book, I've got to both blend the two. And so I see it sort of as the reason why I'm kind of using this metaphor is that when you're able to truly blend, that is art. And that's why I like the name of your, what you're about. You're about the art of charming people. You're about the art of being able to take someone who has this knowledge and actually convey it in a way that's understandable to someone else. And that's what I see your show does best, is it actually not only entertains people, but it educates them in a way where they're gonna actually be able to relate with this information versus just going, oh, I've heard an interview like this with this author before. So that's something that I really love. And I think that you guys give out awesome sheets and takeaways and stuff like that. That's so cool that most podcasts just don't do.
Well, I appreciate it, man. We work really hard, and I work really hard on making sure that I'm teaching the material to the audience, that the audience is actually learning lessons that they can take away. So every episode of the Jordan Harbinger Show has worksheets. We have our advanced human dynamics classes with our advanced human dynamics level 1 course about networking. Like it's about being able to apply what it is that you've heard on the show, not just having, I guess you would say, some sort of story or some sort of show itself. It actually has to be applicable. It has to be practical. It has to be something that can be implemented by the audience. Every minute of the audience time has to be earned, and every episode has to have practical takeaways. Otherwise, it's a waste of time at the end of the day.
Yeah, I so agree. So one thing that I've got to really ask though is I've listened to interviews of yours that date back even 2, 3, 4, 7 years, and I've seen that there's always persistency. There's always this level of focus. You always kind of knew that art of interviewing for you is something that you wanted to cultivate, or it was just kind of part of your life, so you kept cultivating it. What do you think has kept you persistent and focused in getting the best of the best interviews and content out of your guest?
I realize that, like I said before, that every minute of the show, it has to earn the listener's time. And so in order to keep that going, you have to have a great storyline, but of course you have to have all those practicalities. So it's just not worth doing the show if you're going to half-ass it, because you're going to lose people. They're going to unsubscribe. They're not going to refer it to their friends. Every episode of your show is someone's first time hearing you. You have to make sure that they get hooked. And if I listened to something from somebody that I trusted for an hour and it wasn't good, I'd be disappointed. And then if it happened again a week later, I would be kind of bummed. And then if it happened again a week later, I might not listen to the next one and take a little break from the show. And then if it kept happening, I would just unsubscribe. And I can't afford to let that happen. So if it's a difference between I can prepare for 3 hours and do a mediocre show with somebody, or I can prepare for 9 hours and do a great show with somebody, I will always choose the latter.
Hey, Logan Tyler Nelson here. I would so appreciate it if you took some time to hit the subscribe button. I really want to just honestly live and give. Why? Because I was told when I was young that if you're feeling down, the best way to feel better is by lifting someone up again. So in an effort to make someone feel less alone, please hit the subscribe button so the podcast has a better chance of being found and making someone feel less alone. And if you're feeling down, hey, it can help you. Know that by hitting that subscribe button, you just did someone a huge favor. So thank you for hitting that subscribe button. So inspiring. That's so cool. I think there's a lot of podcasters that probably look up to you and go, all right, how can we copy what Jordan Harbinger is doing? And the thing is you really can't. You just can't. You can try by maybe implementing the same things, like the amount of preparation, but I think what you're doing is sort of, it's not really I guess it's not really just like a reproduced thing. Like everyone has their own thing. But anyways, I want to go into I guess the sort of mind pump portion of this show is where I ask a few questions from some mind pump family peeps, because I know you were over on their show, and that's actually how I luckily and fortunately got you on this show today is through connecting with them. So the first question is from Jackie Martinez, and she asks, how do you retain all the information that you get from your guests?
Good question. The answer is I totally don't. And I don't expect anyone else to either. I think it's sort of dangerous. People are like, oh, no, I feel guilty because I don't have I forgot this or something like that. You're not supposed to retain everything. You're supposed to find one or two things that you think resonates with you, that you like, that you want to take away from that. And then, you retain that and you use that. And additionally, we have the worksheets that we create for each episode. And so those are always in the show notes. So essentially, you can go to the worksheet in the show notes and you can get some of the main takeaways. So listen to the show, enjoy the show, pull one or two things away. But if you want to make sure that you got every bit away from the guest, go and do the worksheet, because the worksheets are designed so that you can listen to and enjoy the show without feeling guilty about maybe forgetting some bit of practical knowledge.
Yeah. Oh, man, I love that you say that, because I downloaded the worksheet from Simon Sinek's episode, and it's a great, anytime I want to start something new, I always start with that sort of worksheet in mind, because I just think it's so important to know the why.
Exactly. Yeah, the worksheet will have what some of our editors thought were some of the major takeaways. Any drills or practicals will be outlined in there. It's a great way to refresh yourself from the show so that you don't have to trip and figure out, oh no, what am I going to get? How am I going to get this? How am I going to remember this? I better stop lifting weights and take notes. That stuff it's not fun.
Adam Joshua Castro asks, why and when did you find that this passion of yours for interviewing was something that you wanted to cultivate?
About 7 years into doing the show, I was recording an anniversary episode, 7th anniversary episode with Robert Greene, who's a well-known author, 48 Laws of Power, among other things. And at the end of the show, he said, hey, this is a good interview. And I said, oh, thanks. And he's like, yeah, no, really, though. I've done a lot of interviews, and you're really good at this. This is a lot of fun. And I was really surprised and taken aback by that. And I remember telling Ryan Holiday, who I think had introduced us, was like, oh, Robert's so nice. He said that this is a good interview. And he's like, he doesn't really throw compliments around like that. So he must have meant it. And that meant a lot to me, because I thought, here's this guy who does tons of media with tons of different people for a long time and is probably a pretty particular guy. And he really enjoyed this. And the reason was because I'd read the book and I tried a little bit extra hard to make sure it was a good one for the guest and for the audience. And that to me was a big deal. And so I started to take the show more seriously. And as I started to get better and better at the skill and the craft of interviewing, I started to really enjoy it a lot more, because I'd already had the basics down. I was already decent at talking into a microphone. I could already handle live radio. I could already coach people in real time. I could already ask questions and make things fun. But I wanted to get really good at interviewing, because I was looking for other shows that had great interviews with interesting people, and there just weren't that many. There's a lot of shows that have mediocre interviews with interesting people, but there weren't really any great ones. And I wanted to create one that I would listen to. And so that's what I set out to do. And so that really was what really ignited the passion in me.
That is so awesome. That is so awesome, just because I think it really gives sort of a clear, definitive, that everyone needs that sort of one person in their life, or two people, or maybe a group of people that just go hey, Jordan, you're really darn good at this. Even if you think it's that sort of I don't know, the critic inside your head, the sort of that person that tells you suck, even though what you're doing is incredible, because you didn't think you were that good with the whole interviewing thing. And then all of a sudden this rock star, freaking Robert Greene, comes in your life, who is the writer of Mastery, knows that you're a master interviewer, and you had no idea. And it's just especially when someone like him, or someone that you look up to, finally says that, earning that compliment is everything to sort of finally go, okay, this is something that I need to really focus on. So that's super, super cool.
Yeah, well, I agree. Earning a compliment certainly beats getting one just because the other person kind of, likes you or wants something from you. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. So Adam Schaefer wants to know who's your favorite Mind Pump host?
Who wanted to know that?
Adam Schaefer, who's your favorite Mind Pump host?
Oh man, that's tough. Sal's got a nice personality that I really jive with, but I really like Justin. But Adam and I tend to have, I think, the funniest conversation. I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. I'm gonna pick Doug because he's the quiet one that is the man behind all the. We know he's the guy behind the guy.
He's your Philip.
My what?
Phillips your isn't he your isn't
Jason,
or
my producer Jason.
I'm sorry.
Jason Phillip, same thing.
No.
He's gonna love that he couldn't even remember his name.
Oh.
He's your Philip. Yeah. Yeah. Same difference. That's funny.
No, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I said Philip. I meant I really did mean Jason. It just goes to show you how good my memory is, right? Anyways.
Yeah, I suppose so.
So the next thing I want to go into though is called Scratch the Surface Curiosity Questions, where we just learn a little bit more about you, and also maybe throughout the week I gathered some questions I gotta specifically ask you. So whenever you're ready for that, we'll go into that.
Sure.
Awesome. The first question is sort of a giving's giving question, where it's all about making someone feel a little less alone by sharing with us maybe a thought that you had about yourself that you were embarrassed by having or a little ashamed about having.
Sorry, can you clarify that? I'm not sure I get that.
Yeah, so like maybe a thought like I'm not good enough, or maybe you were embarrassed that you saw a person that was walking down the street and they had this limp, and you're like, oh God, like that's ugly. Like, or maybe you had a thought about yourself where you're like, oh man, like I am just one freaking terrible person because of XYZ. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. What's my sort of guilty? Yeah, of course. I sometimes catch myself going, oh man, I'm annoyed that person had this successful thing happen to them. And then I realize, wait a minute, I'm happy for my friends, actually, genuinely. I'm just unhappy that I didn't have a similar success recently. But then I think about it and I'm like, oh, well, I did have a similar success recently. So there's really nothing there. But I know that I'm competitive inherently. So when other people get things like that, I often go, oh, well, I didn't get that. What does it mean about me? Or they got that instead of me. And I have to avoid thinking, well, at least I have this, or trying to compare myself to them, because it's not worth it. It's a losing battle, and it's how you ruin friendships, right? Becoming competitive with your friends is a really good way to ruin all your relationships.
Yeah, for sure. I'd like to ask you, who was the first guest that you were like super excited about interviewing, and maybe there's a horror story about what happened behind that, and how did it go, and why do you think that maybe the interview didn't go as well as planned?
Anytime I've done a really bad interview, generally is a lack of prep. I mean, granted, there are definitely some interviewees that come on and they're just extremely dry, extremely boring, but it still ends up being my fault, because had I looked up their talks, I would have found that initially. But maybe I was really interested in their book and I just went, this is going to be great. And then instead of looking up their talk because I was lazy or, lack of prep, or I didn't Google hard enough, I find, oh no, you know what? This person didn't really do such a great job. And it becomes a problem. It really ends up sucking, and I end up having to dump the interview. But all of that stuff is avoidable. If you look hard enough, you find somebody giving a talk online, or even if they have no talks online, you should have done a pre-interview call with them. And usually it just chalks up to I can chalk it up to my own laziness that I didn't figure it out initially when I should have.
Man, you're like Jocko Willink, man. You just like take responsibility for yourself. Like, even, oh man, I just love that about you. You just are you don't ever blame it on someone else. That's a great trait to have. Seriously.
Yeah, you got to take that extreme ownership, really. You can say, "Oh, that guest sucked. What a crappy speaker." But why didn't you know he was a crappy speaker, and why did you still end up booking it? Where in the chain of command did you end up booking a speaker that wasn't good? Oh, your producer did it? Well, why didn't your producer have a better process to vet speakers, right? So there's always somewhere where you can improve the process. So luckily it's so rare that I don't have to worry about it too much. But usually whenever I can't remember a time where I booked someone and it didn't work out and it wasn't obviously my fault for some reason.
That's huge. So that's huge to just know about yourself. That's really cool. But you've had some like really incredible people on your show. How do you keep those people sort of like in your inner circle? That's hard to say. In your inner circle, and keep up to date with them.
I add people to CRM systems. So like I use Contactually. I keep their number in my phone. I add their birthday to my calendar and reach out to them a few days before that. I don't reach out to them on the birthday because then you end up with, all this noise. Everyone's wishing them happy birthday on the same day. But I will reach out to them on that or a few days before that. It's really not that hard to stay in touch with people if you actually put a system in place to do so. So I'll use systems like Contactually, importing their Facebook birthday calendar, and, using things like Instagram. I will look at the Instagram feed, the Facebook feed, and if I see they have big news in their life, instead of sending them a message about that on Instagram or Facebook, I'll text or call them. So that ends up keeping them a little bit closer to me, right? So instead of just clicking like on some photo, I might actually reach out, email, text, phone, and say, hey, I saw you had a baby. Congratulations. Life must be so amazing. I take those opportunities. I call it opportunistic network maintenance. There's also systematic network maintenance where you actually have a CRM like Contactually or a birthday calendar. That's a system directly used to keep in touch with people. But opportunistic, using those algorithms from Facebook and Instagram to show you who has news and keeping up with them that way.
Oh, man, that's huge. I love that so much. Oh, that's so cool. Really, really cool, because it just goes to show you that that's the difference of someone that actually takes time and effort and care into cultivating a solid, awesome relationship versus someone that just goes, all right, I want 1,000 people to love me. Like, why not make 4 quarters instead of having 100 pennies happen in your life? And I think that just it goes to show you why people do like Jordan Harbinger so much. So yeah, I mean, I haven't met anybody. I don't know if I've actually met anyone in person, but there's very few people that hate you, Jordan.
Very few. There's a few, though. Definitely.
Oh, for sure. You can't make everybody happy. But so I want to go into just quickly, like just 30 seconds or less, sort of like rapid fire questions, and not very deep or thoughtful, but just so, because I know that you have a very busy schedule, and I want you to get back to your life, and anybody that's listening right now can actually start taking anything that they're listening from this and actually implementing it in their life. So instead of just listening to more and more podcasts, instead of actually taking action,
Yeah, exactly. So can you clarify the question? I'll happily answer.
Awesome. So the first question is, where's your go-to favorite social media?
I like Instagram, which is funny because I never used it before October. And then I suddenly started to get into it. And now I really get it. Now I'm like, man, I wish I'd done this years ago, because everybody else was so into it. It was really growing like crazy and everybody was loving it all the time. And I just couldn't be bothered. Now I really do enjoy it. I love seeing people's photos, those little videos. I like making them. I like posting other things up there, interacting with the commenters, check my inbox there. I all but stopped using Facebook. I like Twitter as well because it's short, but I do tend to prefer Instagram.
Sick. Dude, yeah. Please go follow Jordan's Instagram. Where can they find that Instagram?
At Jordan Harbinger on Twitter and on Instagram.
Nice. I love it. Yeah, seriously, go there. I love your Instagram, and your stories are always like super, super inspiring, and I'm always jealous of who you're seeing across from, but definitely check it out. There's a lot of great content that you put on there. The next question is, if you could pick one of these master interviewers, who do you think's the best out of all of them? Charlie Rose, Larry King, Oprah, Tim Ferriss, or Howard Stern?
Yeah, I think probably Charlie Rose is the best interviewer out of all of them. I'm not a huge Howard Stern is really great interviews, but I'm not really interested in the rest of his show. And a lot of times the interviews are dark, and I'm not that interested in that. I don't consider some of the other folks master interviewers per se. They have big shows, but I don't necessarily consider them master interviewers. So I think Charlie Rose takes that pretty easily.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. Dude, I listened to Charlie Rose so much before I got into podcasting. I'm so happy I did, because he's just taught me what it is to be a really great journalist and get the best story out of an interview. And then also not only the best story, but actually get away with what they're going through as far as who he's interviewing. He's like a freaking master psychologist at the same time.
Yeah, he's prepared. You can tell.
100%. So the next question I'd love to ask you is, who specifically would you love to ask this question to? What do you think of me? Meaning, like, who do you think in your life right now keeps you on your toes, and who are you kind of constantly gain sort of approval from? Not in a bad way, but sort of like, stay on all cylinders.
I'm not even sure. Truth be told, I'm not entirely sure. I really don't know if I have anyone like that. Maybe my wife or something like that. I don't really pay a whole lot of attention to that. I don't really measure myself against other people like that. I don't think it's healthy, at least not for me. So I haven't really done a whole lot of that. So I don't think that I have a direct answer to that question, unfortunately.
No, that's fine. That's totally cool. Like, I'm surprised that you answered it like that, because I just see there's this extreme sort of like responsibility that you have for yourself, and you are someone who really likes to work hard. And I was actually, when I wrote down that question, I was like, man, I bet he has someone in his life that he just knows he needs to show up for constantly, 100% all the time. But at the same time, like you said, your wife, but that if you're trying to, I guess, gain approval from your own wife, that's kind of like a sad relationship.
A little bit. Yeah, exactly.
But do you have a favorite podcast, or maybe a favorite audiobook, or a blog that you follow at the current moment?
I like Impact Theory with Tom Bilyeu. I think he's really good at what he does. He's got a lot of great guests. I don't love all the guests, obviously. I mean, you wouldn't from any show, but I think he's just really smart and insightful. And he's mostly on YouTube, but he also has a podcast called Impact Theory.
Yeah, that's great. I listened to your guys' interview. Amazing. So check out that interview ASAP, because to hear some of the two best interviewers kind of like go back and forth, it is like watching a great tennis game if you're a fan of tennis. But I guess in the land of podcasting, if you love podcasting, you will love this interview. So check that out. 2 more questions for you, and it's I love to ask you this sort of question of a self-inquisitive question that anyone that's listening right now could ask themselves this one self-inquisitive question throughout the day, in order to start actually changing the dreams that they have inside their head and putting into reality.
I mean, I think what I would ask for is, how do I make myself better today than I was yesterday? And it's not just sort of like this nuance, like, how can I be better today than yesterday? Really look at the things that you did and try to nitpick things that you can improve. So, for example, if you did a bunch of commercials yesterday, listen to the commercials and figure out how you can make better commercials. What do they have or what don't they have that you think they need? You can ask for feedback. You can get coaching. I always just look at my activities and try to troubleshoot those and try to make those better and get feedback. I'm not sitting around asking myself, how can I be a better neighbor today or whatever, right? I'm looking at what are the actual things that I have accomplished, achieved, or created, and how can I make those better? And sometimes that involves finding coaches for that, voice coaching, media coaching, interview coaching, things like that. And even speed reading to get better at the prep, that kind of thing. Personal trainer to get better at weightlifting. I mean, or exercise so I can pack more into a shorter time. It's really that simple. I think a lot of people overcomplicate winning, so to speak.
Oh, no. That's why minimalist thing, when you actually start reading up on minimalism and you go, hey, this is like, life is simple, but we just oversimplify things. We just make everything worse than it actually is. And when that is happening, I think minimalism and simplifying it is just always the best answer. So super happy you point that out. And the last question is just, anyone that's listening to this right now, how can they support you in whatever endeavor you're currently taking into your life?
Well, I do the Jordan Harbinger show, so I'd love to see people go to the Jordan Harbinger show, learn some serious skills for their business or personal life, networking, all kinds of stuff, body language, persuasion, influence. We have worksheets for each episode. The Jordan Harbinger show is where you can find that. And if you really want to learn relationship development, nonverbal communication, and how I keep in touch and reach out to all these influencers, if you go to advancedhumandynamics.com, I have the level 1 course you can click on there. It's free, and it's all about creating those relationships and maintaining them. And it's game-changing stuff. advancedhumandynamics.com/level1 or click level 1. But otherwise, just check out the Jordan Harbinger show, and I'm looking forward to hearing feedback from your audience on what they think.
Nice. Yeah, please go check that out if you haven't yet. You're really missing out. And even though it's free, like that price tag, please pretend that there is a price tag on it, because I guarantee that you will actually take that free course seriously and actually implement it in your life to start actually changing this miserable thing that you have going on in your life and changing it into something even better. Or maybe you just want to learn better social skills. Like, his show is the place to be definitely listening to. So thank you, Jordan, so much for taking the time to be with us today, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
All right, there's another episode of Scratch Your Own Itch. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to support the show by listening. The biggest compliment you could ever pay me is just by sharing this, because honestly, it doesn't take much, and it feels so good when people create something and take time. And when I see someone take time to create something that really just changed my day, either made me feel less alone, maybe put a smile on my face, made me laugh, made me feel wiser, I always want to share it with the world. Because why? When I share something that resonates with me, why not share it? I mean, that's just kind of the thing that goes around, and it's free. It takes no time at all other than just a click of the button, share, on either Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Any of those social media platforms would be great to share this. So I really appreciate it. And I want to say that anybody who's looking to gain authority or expertise in their area, and they don't want to take another year or year and a half to write a book and wait until that's published, I think the best way is right now is to start a podcast. So if you're at all interested in starting a podcast, if you meet the certain requirements, I would love to help you with a podcast and also get a website going for you as well. And this is not an easy task. It's hard to actually get it done and get it out there. So every now and then we need some help, and I'm here for you. So please reach me at Logan at LoganTylerNelson.com if you're interested at all. And don't ever forget, you matter and you're enough.